The green invaders you spend hundreds of dollars trying to poison each spring are the exact same plants that kept your great-grandparents alive through the Great Depression. Modern convenience traded deep, localized wisdom for a pharmacy aisle. We handed over our health to giant corporations and paved over the very roots that once healed us. But that ancient knowledge is still sleeping right beneath your lawnmower, waiting for you to simply bend down and claim it. We will reveal the invasive monster taking over American riverbanks that holds the hidden key to battling tick-borne diseases. And wait until you see the common backyard nuisance that acts so much like a heavy pharmaceutical painkiller. Ancient doctors carved its sap into raw opium blocks. Hit subscribe to join the few who choose to remember what the rest of the world so carelessly forgot. Here are 20 medicinal weeds you pick once and use forever, ranked from remarkable to absolutely unforgettable. Number 1. Dandelion. The golden flower invading your pristine lawn was not always a hated enemy. 10th century Arabian physicians like Ibn Sina documented its potent liver-healing properties, calling it taraxacum. By the mid-20th century, the rise of perfectly manicured, chemical-soaked suburban lawns turned this revered healer into public enemy number 1. We were sold herbicides to kill the very medicine we needed. Modern research confirms what ancient texts knew. Studies show the root contains powerful polysaccharides that stimulate liver function and regulate blood sugar. Traditionally, you roast the thick taproot to brew a dark, bitter, coffee-like drink that flushes toxins from your system. Be incredibly careful, though. Foraging this near roadsides or treated lawns means you might ingest deadly chemical runoff instead of medicine. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it. Number 2. Plantain. You step on this broad, ribbed leaf every time you walk across a park. Ancient Saxon healers listed it among their 9 sacred herbs in the 10th century, revering it as way bread. Then came the era of antibiotic ointments in plastic tubes. The knowledge of this gentle, backyard healer was deliberately pushed aside for profitable, mass-produced synthetic creams. Yet, clinical research confirms its power. Studies show the leaves contain allantoin, a compound that aggressively promotes skin's cellular regeneration and stops minor bleeding. Traditionally, you crush the fresh leaves between your fingers to release the juices, pressing the green poultice directly onto wasp stings, spider bites, or deep cuts to instantly draw out venom and seal the wound. Your grandmother had a name for this. She kept it in her kitchen. We forgot to ask her why. Number 3. Yarrow. Those feathery leaves and flat white flower clusters hiding in your local meadow carry a blood-soaked history. In ancient Greece, around 1200 BC, legendary warriors used it to staunch the bleeding of battlefield wounds. They named it Achillea. After the Civil War, medical industrialization swept across America. Hospitals replaced field medicine, and this miraculous styptic weed was relegated to the compost bin. Modern science proves the ancients right. Documented evidence indicates it contains achillein, an alkaloid that actively promotes rapid blood coagulation. Traditionally, you dry the flowering tops and crush them into a fine powder, packing it tightly into open wounds to immediately stop severe bleeding. Ensure you never confuse it with deadly hemlock, which features similar umbrella-like white flowers. We spent billions developing a synthetic version of something that grew wild and free for 4,000 years. Number 4. Purslane. Look closely at the fleshy, red-stemmed succulent creeping out of the cracks in your driveway. In ancient Persia, over 2,000 years ago, it was cultivated as a vital food and medicine, known as kurfa. By the time industrial agriculture took over American diets in the 1950s, this nutritional powerhouse was deemed a worthless agricultural nuisance and relentlessly sprayed with weed killer. But research confirms a stunning truth. Studies show it contains higher levels of heart-protecting omega-3 fatty acids than any other leafy green vegetable on Earth. Traditionally, you chop the crisp, watery stems and leaves directly into salads or blend them into tonics to drastically reduce systemic inflammation. But beware of its toxic lookalike, hairy spurge. If the stem snaps and oozes a milky white sap, throw it away immediately. Most Americans touch this plant every summer without knowing what it can do. Number 5. Mullein. The towering stalk with fuzzy, pale green leaves standing silently on the highway median is a respiratory savior. 1st century Roman physician Dioscorides heavily documented its use for treating diseased lungs, calling it phlomos. When the pharmaceutical industry standardized cough suppressants in the 20th century, this gentle giant was suddenly dismissed as mere folklore. Science tells a vastly different story today. Modern research suggests its saponins act as potent expectorants, aggressively breaking up deep bronchial congestion. Traditionally, you harvest the large, velvet-like leaves and steep them in boiling water for 20 minutes, drinking the warm, earthy tea to soothe chronic coughs and asthma. You must strain the liquid through a fine cloth, as the tiny leaf hairs will severely irritate your throat if swallowed. This one is still growing across most of the U.S. Right now, the question is whether you will recognize it. Number 6. St. John's wort. Notice the bright yellow, star-shaped flowers blooming wildly at the edge of the woods. Ancient Greek herbalists prescribed this vibrant plant as early as 400 BC to ward off dark moods and severe melancholia. As 20th century psychiatry embraced chemical antidepressants, natural mood stabilizers were ruthlessly mocked and cast aside by the medical establishment. Yet rigorous clinical studies now show it contains hypericin and hyperforin. These compounds regulate serotonin and dopamine levels in the brain just as effectively as some prescription medications. Traditionally, you infuse the fresh yellow flowers in olive oil and leave it in the sun until the liquid turns a deep, bleeding red, then use it topically for nerve pain. However, it can violently interact with prescription medications, completely neutralizing things like blood thinners and anesthetics. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it. Number 7. Chickweed. This delicate, sprawling green, mat takes over garden beds the second the spring soil warms up. 17th century English herbalists cherished it, relying on its cooling properties to survive brutal summers and rampant fevers. The advent of synthetic cooling gels and hydrocortisone creams in the modern era rendered this gentle, effective plant seemingly obsolete. It became just another weed to rip out. But modern research confirms its incredible soothing power. Studies show it is loaded with saponins and ascorbic acid, making it a highly effective anti-inflammatory for severe skin conditions. Traditionally, you take massive handfuls of the fresh stems and leaves, tossing them directly into a hot bath to instantly calm eczema, severe rashes, and brutal itching. Your grandmother had a name for this. She kept it in her kitchen. We forgot to ask her why. Number 8. Burdock. Those massive elephant ear leaves and annoying sticky burrs clinging to your clothes have a profound history. Medieval European monks heavily relied on it in the 12th century, brewing it to cleanse the blood and cure systemic infections. When modern detox clinics and expensive synthetic diuretics flooded the market, this powerful, free-growing root was forgotten by everyone except cattle ranchers who despised it. Yet, clinical studies reveal incredible potential. Documented evidence indicates the root is packed with inulin and potent antioxidants that aggressively protect the liver and stabilize massive blood sugar spikes. Traditionally, you dig up the deep taproot in its first year, boil it for 30 minutes, and drink the dark, bitter decoction to flush heavy metals from your system. We spent billions developing a synthetic version of something that grew wild and free for 4,000 years. Number 9. Cleavers. You have felt this annoying, Velcro-like plant stick to your jeans in the woods. Ancient indigenous North American tribes utilized it heavily, relying on its trailing stems as a powerful kidney tonic long before settlers arrived. The rise of prescription water pills entirely erased this vital lymphatic cleanser from our collective memory. Modern research confirms what those tribes knew. Studies show it significantly stimulates the lymphatic system, actively helping the body drain swollen lymph nodes and clear severe urinary tract infections. Traditionally, you gather the fresh, sticky stems, steep them in cold water overnight, and drink the refreshing infusion to clear stagnant toxins. Do not consume it if you take diabetic medication without monitoring levels, as its strong diuretic properties can drastically alter drug efficacy. Most Americans touch this plant every summer without knowing what it can do. Number 10. Red clover. The ubiquitous pinkish-purple blossoms dotting forgotten pastures are hiding a powerful secret. 2nd century Chinese medicine practitioners recognized its remarkable ability to thin the blood and ease respiratory spasms, prescribing it for persistent, racking coughs. Once the mid-20th century ushered in specialized hormonal therapies and synthetic blood thinners, this humble pasture weed was entirely discarded by mainstream physicians. Modern science, however, proves its worth. Research suggests the blossoms contain powerful isoflavones, plant-based estrogens that drastically reduce severe menopausal hot flashes and improve bone density. Traditionally, you harvest the vibrant flower heads, drying them on screens to brew a deeply nourishing, earthy tea. Be incredibly careful, though. If you harvest fermented or moldy blossoms, they produce dicumarol, a deadly compound that can cause internal hemorrhaging. This one is still growing across most of the U.S. Right now the question is whether you will recognize it. Number 11. Yellow dock. Look for the tall, rust-colored stalks standing defiantly in winter fields. 19th century American eclectic physicians prized this bitter root above almost all others for treating severe anemia and liver stagnation. The medical monopolies of the early 1900s successfully branded natural iron supplements as quackery, pushing patients towards synthesized iron pills that ravage the stomach. Yet, documented clinical evidence indicates they were entirely wrong. Studies show the root contains incredibly bioavailable iron, combined with anthraquinones that stimulate bowel function, allowing for deep, systemic absorption without painful constipation. Traditionally, you dig up the thick yellow root, chop it finely, and simmer it in apple cider vinegar for weeks to extract its blood-building properties. Avoid consuming the raw leaves in massive quantities, as their high oxalic acid content can violently trigger kidney stones. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it. Number 12. Wood sorrel. You might recognize these tiny, heart-shaped leaves that taste exactly like sour green apples. Indigenous tribes of the American Northeast utilized it for centuries, boiling the greens to treat severe mouth sores and scurvy during brutal winters. The explosion of globalized grocery stores bringing fresh citrus everywhere meant this local vitamin powerhouse was completely forgotten. But modern research confirms its payload. Studies show the leaves are packed with highly concentrated doses of vitamin C and powerful antibacterial compounds. Traditionally, you chew the raw, tart leaves directly from the soil to instantly soothe a sore throat or stop bleeding gums on the trail. Just avoid eating it by the bowlful because its oxalic acid binds with calcium and triggers severe joint pain. Your grandmother had a name for this. She kept it in her kitchen. We forgot to ask her why. Number 13. Chicory. The bright blue flowers blooming on unforgiving roadside gravel are a testament to survival. Ancient Egyptians cultivated it aggressively along the Nile in 400 BC, using it to purify the liver and heal the heart. After World War II, when synthetic flavorings and lab-made digestive enzymes flooded the American market, this incredible root was dismissed as a poor man's coffee substitute. Today, science is eating its words. Research confirms the taproot is composed of 20% inulin, a powerful prebiotic fiber that repopulates dead gut microbiomes and stabilizes blood sugar. Traditionally, you roast the thick root until dark brown, grinding it to brew a bitter, caffeine-free beverage that heals your digestive tract. Do not harvest it near busy highways, as it aggressively absorbs toxic heavy metals. We spent billions developing a synthetic version of something that grew wild and free for 4,000 years. Number 14. Mugwort. Walk through any overgrown lot, and you brush against leaves with a silvery underside. In 10th century medieval Europe, weary travelers lined their boots with it to prevent exhaustion and ward off infectious disease. When the modern era replaced holistic prevention with reactive chemical treatments, this bitter weed was sprayed with poison and eradicated. Yet modern research points to astonishing realities. Studies show the volatile oils within its leaves contain artemisinin, a compound heavily researched for its aggressive antiparasitic and antimalarial properties. Traditionally, you dry the silvery leaves and burn them as a fragrant smudge to clear respiratory congestion and deter disease-carrying insects. Pregnant women must never consume or inhale it, as it powerfully stimulates uterine contractions and causes severe miscarriages. Most Americans touch this plant every summer without knowing what it can do. You're probably noticing a troubling pattern by now. This vital, life-saving knowledge wasn't just lost, it was actively replaced, buried, and paved over by industries that profit from our ignorance. Tell me in the comments which weed on this list shocked you the most and why. I read every single one, and every comment helps preserve this knowledge for someone who desperately needs it. Number 15. Teasel. Those spiky, medieval-looking seed heads standing dead in winter fields look intensely uninviting. Native American tribes, particularly the Iroquois, utilized the deep roots of this aggressive biennial as a potent tissue healer long before the 1700s. The rise of modern orthopedics and synthetic anti-inflammatories caused this incredible skeletal healer to be labeled an invasive, noxious weed meant only for the brush hog. However, modern scientific validation is stunning. Documented evidence indicates the root extracts rapidly stimulate cellular regeneration in torn ligaments, muscles, and heavily damaged joint tissues. Traditionally, you dig up the first-year taproot, clean it meticulously, and soak it in high-proof alcohol to create an incredibly strong tincture for severe joint pain. Just be aware of its sharp, flesh-tearing spines during harvest. This one is still growing across most of the U.S. Right now, the question is whether you will recognize it. Number 16. Queen Anne's Lace. These intricate, white, umbrella-shaped flowers nearly every late summer meadow. Ancient Romans, dating back to 200 BC, meticulously harvested its seeds, utilizing them as one of the world's first natural, highly effective contraceptives. The 20th century pharmaceutical boom erased this ancient wisdom, replacing free, wild medicine with expensive, synthetic hormone pills that alter human chemistry. But modern clinical research validates the ancients. Studies show the seeds uniquely block progesterone synthesis, aggressively interrupting implantation without permanently damaging the reproductive system. Traditionally, you harvest the mature, dry seeds in autumn, chewing a small teaspoon daily with a glass of water to regulate menstrual cycles. This plant looks almost identical to poison hemlock, which will paralyze your lungs and kill you within hours. This plant outlived every empire that discovered it. Number 17. Japanese knotweed. This aggressive, bamboo-like monster is systematically destroying American riverbanks and concrete foundations. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners revered it 1,000 years ago, naming it Huzhang and using it to purge deep, systemic infections. Today, neighborhood associations and city governments spend millions deploying toxic herbicides to kill it, completely blind to the miraculous cure growing through their pavement. Yet, clinical science is reeling from its potential. Research confirms its massive rhizomes contain the highest botanical concentration of resveratrol on Earth, heavily utilized in cutting-edge treatments for Lyme disease and severe cardiovascular damage. Traditionally, you dig out the massive root system, dry it, and boil it into a dark, earthy decoction to pull tick-borne pathogens from deep tissue. Never harvest it near sprayed municipal areas. Your grandmother had a name for this. She kept it in her kitchen. We forgot to ask her why. Number 18. Boneset. You'll find this fuzzy, white-flowered perennial standing tall in damp, swampy depressions. Early American settlers learned of its immense power from indigenous tribes in the 1800s, using it to survive a brutal strain of influenza famously known as break-bone fever. With the invention of over-the-counter fever reducers like acetaminophen, this literal lifesaver was relegated to the forgotten pages of antique medical journals. But modern laboratory analysis confirms its incredible mechanism. Studies show the aerial parts contain potent immunostimulant polysaccharides that trigger an aggressive white blood cell response, breaking severe fevers by inducing heavy sweating. Traditionally, you steep the dried leaves in hot water, drinking the excruciatingly bitter tea while wrapped in heavy blankets to sweat out the deepest viruses. We spent billions developing a synthetic version of something that grew wild and free for 4,000 years. Number 19. Ghost pipe. This translucent white plant pushes through the dark forest floor without any chlorophyll. Late 19th century eclectic physicians heavily relied on this eerie, parasitic herb, using it as a potent nervine to calm physical spasms and intense psychological trauma. As the modern psychiatric industry exploded with lab-synthesized sedatives and chemical painkillers, this delicate forest phantom was entirely written out of the medical textbooks. Modern research confirms its profound physiological effects. Documented evidence indicates its complex compounds act rapidly on the central nervous system, drastically dialing down the brain's perception of overwhelming pain. Traditionally, you harvest the pale plant and immediately submerge it in alcohol to create a dark purple tincture for panic attacks. Be incredibly careful, as harvesting too much will obliterate this rare, uncultivable species. Most Americans touch this plant every summer without knowing what it can do. Number 20. Wild lettuce. Look closely at the tall, spiky weed shooting up from the cracks in urban sidewalks. Ancient Egyptians and 19th century surgeons alike tapped its milky sap, using it as an unparalleled natural anesthetic when nothing else was available. During the industrialization of medicine, heavily addictive, synthetic opioids became highly profitable, and this miraculous, pain-killing weed was ruthlessly sprayed into oblivion. But science cannot deny its chemical reality. Studies show the white sap contains lacticarium, a profound analgesic compound that interacts with the central nervous system exactly like pharmaceutical opiates, without the brutal physical addiction. Traditionally, you score the thick stem with a knife, scraping the bleeding white sap into a sticky resin that you steep in tea for immense pain relief. A massive overdose can dangerously slow your heart rate. This one is still growing across most of the U.S. Right now, the question is whether you will recognize it. We are not helpless consumers trapped in a system that charges us for the privilege of being sick. The earth never stopped providing exactly what we need to heal, to survive, and to thrive. The greatest trick modern convenience ever played was convincing us that medicine is something built in a factory, rather than something grown in the dirt beneath our feet. Tomorrow morning, walk outside, look down, and find just one plant we talk about today. Stop seeing weeds, and start seeing the survival garden you already own. Hit the like button if this video changed how you look at the ground. Then, tell me in the comments, will you start foraging, or are you still hesitant to try? Finally, subscribe to Cropbound to join the quiet few who choose to remember what the rest of the world forgot. The roots of survival are already in your backyard. You just have to be brave enough to dig them up.